Who do you think's covering up the battle?
Listen, the only thing across that ocean is Murska Air Base. That's Yuktobanian territory.
But haven't we been allies with the Ukes since the war 15 years ago?
Nagase, you keep flying like that and you'll die real soon.
I won't be the same.
You're flying number 2 on my wing. Gotta keep an eye on you, or who knows what you'll get yourself into.
Captain!
Warning! Warning! War Dog Squadron, return to base immediately!
What happened? Yuktobania just declared war.
As a kid, what were some of the coolest things that you were fascinated by? I think most people would say fast, exotic cars tearing through the road at breakneck speeds. Or powerful guns capable of complete destruction. Sharp and deadly swords of the medieval ages. Or even sleek and agile fighter planes that can soar through the skies freely. While many video games do exist to fulfill these wild fantasies, how many of these games can give you an exhilarating experience behind the cockpit of a fighter jet? I want to use this video to introduce a franchise that has been very special to me. Ace Combat is a series of arcade flight games that involve the player character piloting licensed as well as original fighter aircraft and taking them into battle on large-scale missions. These games are usually set in the fictional world of Strangereal, which is just like our Earth, albeit with original nations and borders that are only loosely based on real-world countries. The setting of each game often involves a large-scale war between 2 or more of these nations, and they usually contain surprisingly deep and engaging stories. Ace Combat isn't just another flight game, and its target audience isn't necessarily only limited to fighter plane enthusiasts. Much like people can enjoy Call of Duty games without necessarily being into guns, I believe people can also enjoy Ace Combat games without being into fighter jets. So then, why is Ace Combat such a niche franchise? They're actually really well made games. I believe that the task of flying an aircraft isn't apparently as easy as simply aiming and clicking on the enemy with your mouse. And I say that while meaning no offense to FPS games. They require their own specific skill set. I'm just saying they're much easier to get into. It may seem intimidating at first, but Ace Combat is not a flight simulator. If you've ever learned to fly in other games like GTA or Battlefield, you're already qualified to play Ace Combat without any real trouble. Alternatively, playing Ace Combat is sure to make you a very capable pilot in other games that involve flying. Finally, you'll be able to outmaneuver those degenerate Hydra griefers in GTA, or cooperate with your squad to perform some sick airstrikes in Battlefield. The fictional world of Ace Combat, Strangereal. Despite being very similar to our real world, it has its own history and lore, and the events in the games leave a lasting mark throughout the series. This makes for an excellent setting for the great stories that are told in most Ace Combat games. The narrative is told through high-quality cutscenes, along with in-game dialogue that constantly keeps you engaged, and develops the story and characters as you play. In most Ace Combat games, you'll encounter infamous enemy squadrons that often develop rivalries with you. They serve as excellent boss battles because they are only fighter pilots just like you. They can also be destroyed just as easily as any other jet on the battlefield, except they will dodge missiles well and perform advanced maneuvers. Shooting them down is only difficult because of their skill. Speaking of boss fights, some of the most unforgettable moments from Ace Combat games are the encounters with large super weapons of mass destruction that have become a signature of the franchise. These imposing monsters boast incredible firepower, and their effects are often felt long before you even encounter them. They interrupt your missions and force you into helpless situations. They are factors completely beyond your control until much later, which builds up the anticipation for your encounter with them. They can be just as difficult to take down as they look. Most importantly, Ace Combat is a series beloved for its solid and smooth arcade flight gameplay. Trying out more advanced jets and their new weapons always makes a noticeable difference, especially the fictional space-age superplanes that are made by the Ace Combat developers themselves. They are very well designed and perform at a league above the rest and even pack some very destructive weapons. Ace Combat games always feel great to play, whether you're getting into intense dogfights, dodging lasers from a super weapon, or rocketing through tight tunnels. The gameplay, that's the most exciting part. There have been some missteps in recent Ace Combat games. It's best if we forget about that one as soon as possible. But Ace Combat 7 is returning the franchise to Strange Real, where it belongs. Sunao Katabuchi, the writer of Ace Combat 4 and 5, is returning. Those games have the best stories in the franchise. Keiki Kobayashi, who is responsible for the amazing soundtrack of the series, is also the composer for Ace Combat 7. All of that, along with the positive impressions from those who tried the preview, is making Ace Combat 7 look like a very promising entry to the series. I think this is an excellent time to introduce the franchise to a new generation of gamers. I hope I've convinced at least one of you into giving Ace Combat a fair try. So I'll see you guys out there in the deep, dark blue skies.